Hey guys, I wanted to go through a little bit of code. I'm not going to be here today. My kiddo's pretty sick. He has a high fever, and he's little, so I gotta stay home with him. Anyways, most of you guys are going to be moving on to assignment 3 today, and there's a couple of things I think will make kind of life easier. So I wanted to go over kind of a few things that are just kind of nice looping kind of things, and some ways that you can take advantage of strings. And so strings are kind of the strings and lists are they actually have a lot in common, but they're ways that we can do it. So so a couple of things that I wanted to get at are we have here we have a word. Okay, and here we have a list. And one of the things that's kind of cool about a word and a list is they actually kind of work the same. I mean, these letters are all together, but we can kind of, Python's sort of smart, and you can sort of go through this sort of letter by letter and say, hey, this is in the 0 spot. The C, for instance, is in the 0 spot. The A is in the 1 spot. B is in the 2 spot, so on and so forth. Just like how all lists are in Python. Hey, this A is in the 0 spot, the 1 spot, the 2 spot. So we can kind of take advantage of that. So let me just run this real quick so you can kind of see what it does. And you can see it says, hey, my secret word is Kaba. And index 0, I have the letter A. That's just telling us a little bit about the list. And then I did a thing where I actually went through the word, and hey, look, it has 2 A's. I found the letter A, I found the letter A, I found 2 B's, and I found a C. Okay, so that's what that does. But I used a couple of new things, so let's kind of see this. So first off, I made a list, and you know, if you take a look at what the first couple of problems on assignment 3 look like, you'll notice it's a pretty good hint, because part of it, what you're supposed to do is go through and count up how many of each letter there are. So the suggestion I give you is that you're gonna make 2 lists. One's gonna represent kind of all the letters. Another one's gonna represent keep track of how many of each letter you have, but you can do that in a list. So I could do, count equals, and then a list, say, well, the first one's going to be A, the second one's going to be how many B's I have, the third one's going to have how many C's I have, and so on and so forth. So we can take advantage of that and change those. But the biggest one that's really useful is this slightly modified for loop command. Now, if you guys go into the second packet, there's a link to a website that has a bunch of stuff about for loops, and if you go about halfway down the page, you should see this one with a little explanation of what it does. But you'll notice that normally when we do a for and in, okay, so like here we did for letter in word. Well, what's that doing? It's going through our variable word, and it's pulling out, each thing that's in here. Well, it knows that it's a word, and so it goes out there. Now, it's not because I used the variable name word or the variable name letter or anything like here. That actually doesn't matter. I could just change this to W, change this to L, and say for L and W. It really is just saying, it's kind of stepping through this like it was a list. Oh, go to spot 0, pull something out. Go to spot 1, pull something out. But I used the variable name letter because, hey, that's what I'm getting, are letters. And this is basically saying for everything in my object, okay, get one of them and then test it. So each time I go through this loop, this is going to kind of add as a temporary placeholder. Okay, so what does this say? Up here, I used a slightly different one. Okay, this one has actually 2 things. And you'll notice that I did something funny to my list. I used enumerate on it. So sometimes we care not only about like the things in our list, but we care about what position they are. Okay? So like I might need for my program to know that both that A is like the first thing in my list is A, but I also need to know it's the first thing. And I need to know that like in the next spot's a B, but I also want to know that's like the second spot on the list. So enumerate helps us do that. So it basically says, hey, if I enumerate this list, it means treat it as both being a list of stuff that has A, B, C, D in it, and let me make an extra variable that will hold the value of the place that we currently on. So it's going to pull out the first item, and it's going to put a 1 in index. Okay, so that's going to be like an integer 1. And this is going to be whatever happens to be in the list. So in this case, I have a word, but it could be a number, it could be, you know, anything you want. It could be a whole word, it could be a sentence, you know, anything in quotes. Anything you can put in a list, that's what it's going to be here. So this index, hey, it's always going to be to a number, and this is always going to be to an item. Now, I always use a word when I'm using an enumerate list. I always use a word like index or counter or something like that that makes me remember, oh, this is a number that's going up by 1 every time. So that's why I put in this little print statement just to kind of remind myself. I said, hey, at index, whatever the current value of index is, I have the letter O, whatever the current thing here is. So if I run that again, you can just see, what was I talking about? Hey, at index 0, I have the letter A. I didn't have to do any work there. It just figured out, based on this little command, that, hey, I'm at spot 0 in my list, and that happens to be a letter A. At spot 1 in my list, I happen to have a B. Spot 2 in my list, I happen to have a C. Okay, that's going to be really useful because I can do stuff like this, where I say, hey, for every letter in the word, I can then check to say, well, is my letter equal to the thing in my list? Sure, let's do that. I'm going to go through every letter in the word and test this if this is true, and then I'm going to print out that I found the item. Okay? Now, if I wanted to, I could do something like modify my little counter here. Okay? And this is where my index is going to come in really useful. I'm going to say, well, the count, okay, maybe I'll call it the letter count. Okay. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to go at the same spot. Because see how here, like, this 0 matches up with this A, this 0 matches up with this B, this 0 matches up with this C. I want to keep that true. So when I'm looking at all the A's, okay, I want to only change my letter count in this spot here. So hey, look, this is just going to be letter count at spot index, wherever we happen to be. And then I'm going to use a little shortcut. I'm going to say plus equals 1. That means I'm just going to add 1 to whatever value happens to be there. Okay? So let's just, you know, assume that that's happened. Okay? And after I've finished this, I'm going to say, here are my totals. And I'll do something like this. And then I'll just print out that list. Okay? So watch what happens here. Okay? Hey, look, it found 2 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. Wow, look, it actually kept track of that. My little thing said, hey, 2, 2, and 1. Okay? So, should be pretty happy about that. So honestly, guys, that's the bulk of problem 1. Since I'm not there, I wanted to give you kind of a strong hint. Now, you'll have to flesh it out so it matches up with all the letters, and you got to add some user input so they can type in whatever letter they want. Okay? If you wanted to be fancy, you might want to do something that, you know, what if they typed in the word in uppercase or lowercase? Turns out there's some commands that can actually help you that. You can actually force it to go to lowercase, and if you search around, you can actually think it's actually like